A warm welcome, everyone, to the Embassy of the Free Mind online, but we're here at the Embassy of the Free Mind, as you can see. My name is Farana Mir Jalili, and I will be your host this evening. It's a great pleasure to host Anne Baring this evening, who is a friend, a longtime mentor, and above all, an inspiration for me. The title of today's talk is The Great Work of Alchemy, Healing the Traumatized Soul. So just first of all, some practicals. We'll have a 1-hour lecture, and after that, we'll have 30 minutes for your questions. So just a few instructions. You can place your questions during the talk in the Q&A box, which is on your right side, middle right side. So please don't put it in the chat box, but in the Q&A box. So without further ado, I will introduce Anne. Anne Baring, born 1931, has an MA on modern history from Oxford University and a PhD in wisdom studies from Ubiquity University. She's a Jungian analyst, author, and co-author of 8 books. And these include with Jules Cashford, The Myth of the Goddess, with Andrew Harvey, The Mystic Vision and the Divine Feminine, with Dr. Scylla Ellsworthy, Soul Power, An Agenda for Conscious Humanity, and an illustrated book for children, the book The Birds Who Flew Beyond Time. And her major work, and really my favorite, The Dream of the Cosmos, A Quest for the Soul. In July 2023, she published Messages from a Transcendent Dimension, the channeled messages received by her mother from 1943, yes, to 68. And the ground of all her work is a deep interest in the spiritual, mythological, shamanic, and artistic traditions of different cultures. Her 2 websites are devoted to a new vision of reality and the issues facing us at this crucial time of choice. These are annebaring.com and stripebaring.com. I will post them into the chat box. So without further ado, Anne, the Zoom floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Farana. At this moment of great peril for the whole world, I'm going to speak to you about the great work of alchemy and how it can heal the traumatized soul. How the human soul and the earth herself are traumatized because the great above and the great below have become separated from each other. In this extraordinary image created by an alchemist called Matthäus Merian, we are shown the completion of the great work of alchemy. What is below has been reunited with what is above. The long separation between them has been overcome. Wearing a star-spangled robe, the alchemist, surrounded by the signs of the zodiac, stands at the center on 2 lions with a single head, from which flows a stream of living water. On his left is the figure of a stag-headed shaman holding a moon, and the figure of Luna with a stream of stars flowing from her breast, and a bunch of grapes held in her hand. Below them is an eagle whose wings embrace water and earth. On the alchemist's right is the figure of Sol and a magnificent lion, together holding the image of the sun. Below them is a phoenix whose wings enfold fire and air. Sol and Luna are connected by their wrists to the great above, the inner dimension of the cosmos. Everything is held within the embrace of the unus mundus, or the divine ground. In the first part of this talk, I will tell you the story of how the great below became separated from the great above. And in the second, I will show how the great work of alchemy is reuniting them. This is the figure of Sophia, or divine wisdom, the presiding image of alchemy, sculpted in stone on the portal of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. She is holding two books, one representing exoteric science and the other the esoteric science of alchemy. A ladder with 9 rungs rests against her, signifying the 9 levels of ascent to union with the divine ground. She holds a scepter in her left hand. Now the cosmos calls to us to become aware that we participate in its life, that everything is sacred and connected. One life, one spirit. Alchemy responds to that call. It asks us to develop cosmic consciousness, to awaken to the divine light in our soul and reunite it with the invisible soul of the cosmos. It transmutes the base metal of our understanding so that we, evolved from the very substance of the stars, can know that we participate in the divine ground of spirit while living in this material dimension of reality. Only a society completely disconnected from the great above could have created the dark alchemy of the atomic bomb in 1945 and gone on to develop the hydrogen bomb and nuclear weapons, believing these weapons would give them power over their adversaries, even allowing them ultimately to rule the world. The stockpile of nuclear weapons now stands at 12,000, with the US and Russia accounting for 90% of these. As we watch the catastrophe unfolding in the Middle East, we may ask, what have we become as a species? How have we descended to such depths of barbarism? When will men realize that in killing their enemies, they are killing their brothers and sisters, since all life on this planet is one and sacred, a manifestation of the God we have been worshiping for thousands of years? We live on a planet that has been governed by the masculine archetype for some 4,000 years, with no feminine archetype to balance it, no sacred marriage between them. From their inception, the 3 patriarchal religions banished the divine feminine from their concept of deity. In doing so, they cut the umbilical cord which connected spirit to nature and the sacred earth. This is how the great above and the great below became separated from each other. All attention was focused on the worship of the transcendent God in heaven. We are now dangerously out of alignment with the earth and the cosmos. As nature and this material dimension of reality were separated from spirit, this gave rise to a false dualism, which has led to the flawed image of reality which currently rules the world and perpetuates these terrible conflicts. The loss of the goddess was the primary reason that we lost our relationship with nature, because in ancient civilizations, the Great Mother and the goddess had personified nature for thousands of years. We need a different concept of God. To restore balance to the world, we need an image of God or spirit that is both mother and father, both female and male. Now, I ventured here a new concept of God or spirit, basing it on what I know about quantum physics. God or spirit or divine mind, so long projected onto a transcendent male creator, remote from our world, is not something distant from us. Quantum physics shows us that we participate in a cosmic consciousness or intelligence which is co-inherent with every atom of our being and every particle of matter. At the subatomic level, everything is connected to everything else. The entire creation, visible and invisible, is one life. Divinity is both within us as well as all around us. This is the revelation that I believe alchemy has guarded for us for thousands of years. But until now, Only a few could understand it. I believe this is what the alchemists were trying to articulate in their work. They were engaged in building Notre Dame and the Gothic cathedral in France. Here is a sculpture of one of them, possibly the master architect of the Cathedral of Notre Dame. Note the title of these cathedrals, Notre Dame, an evocation not only of the Virgin Mary, but of divine wisdom, Sophia, the rejected feminine aspect of the Godhead. As we enter the Aquarian age, we are faced with a choice between blindly continuing with the insanity of the old story, a story of incessant wars and the dominance and control of the planet by men obsessed with the dark alchemy of power, or choosing a new story informed by the understanding that we are, each one of us, participants in one life, the miraculous life of our universe. To continue with the old story will bring about the extinction of our species and possibly the destruction of the planet itself. To choose the new story could bring into being a new civilization in service to the light and love of the divine ground. Collectively, we are going through a profound alchemical process of transformation as we live through the birth process leading to a new understanding of who we are, where we have come from, and what we are doing on this planet, why we are here. We are threatened by evil forces that seek to control every aspect of our lives. The very peril we are in may be our salvation if we can grasp the fact that we are going through a shamanic experience of dying to the old paradigm of reality and awakening to a new one. We may take comfort from the fact that the science of alchemy reminds us that in all chaos, there is a cosmos, in all disorder, a secret order. Now I need to take you far back into the past to understand the events that traumatized the soul and severed the umbilical cord which once connected nature with spirit, the below with the above. This is the first temple in Jerusalem, or a model of it, an imagined model of it. Our original profound relationship with nature and the cosmos was lost when the image of deity changed from Great Mother to Great Father, leading ultimately to the separation of nature from spirit. This inflicted a deep wound on the human soul. The loss of the Great Mother and the goddess came in stages over some 4,000 years, but there was one specific event that accelerated her demise. I need to take you back to the work of the Old Testament scholar, Dr. Margaret Barker, who has revealed in her many books the enormous change in Hebrew cosmology that took place in 623 BCE, when monotheism was first established in Judaism. It was at this date that the goddess or feminine aspect of deity was deleted from the Godhead, and the myth of the fall was created. Prior to this date, the Jewish people had worshipped both a goddess and a god, a king and a queen of heaven, who together had created the world. But in 623 BCE, under a king called Josiah, a powerful group of priests called Deuteronomists took control of the temple in a coup. In an act that has affected both Jews and Christians to this day, they banished the ancient shamanic rituals of the high priest and instituted their own rule. They destroyed every trace of the goddess Asherah, who was worshipped as the Queen of Heaven, divine wisdom, and the Holy Spirit. She was also the tree of life, a cosmic tree that connected the invisible and visible worlds, whose fruit was the gift of immortality. The ancient shamanic rituals of the high priest who had communed with the Queen of Heaven in the tower at the back of the temple were replaced by new rituals based on strict obedience to the law of Moses. Fortunately, many Jews who wanted to preserve the original First Temple teachings about love and wisdom and the worship of the Queen of Heaven sought refuge in the city of Alexandria, where a strong Jewish community had already existed. But in Jerusalem, this brutal takeover of the First Temple left Yahweh as the sole creator God. The divine feminine aspect of the Godhead was excised from Judaism forever, as well as from Christianity, because Christianity took its image of God from the Old Testament. Now, the Deuteronomists did not stop there. They created the myth of the fall in Genesis 2 and 3, with its message of sin, guilt, punishment, and the banishment of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden to a life of hardship and suffering on earth. They bestowed the former title of the Queen of Heaven, Mother of all living, on the human figure of Eve. We are still traumatized by this myth, which became the foundation of the Christian myth and the reason why we needed the sacrificial death of the Son of God to redeem us. In this myth, Eve was blamed for bringing sin, suffering, and death into the world, and this became the primary reason for the unrelenting persecution of generations of women who had the heavy burden of the sin of Eve placed on them by the Christian fathers and generations of Christian priests, culminating in their being tried and condemned to death at the stake by the Inquisition for consorting with the devil. This immensely powerful myth is the main root of the misogyny that pollutes our culture to this day, giving rise to a deep unconscious suspicion, even a fear of women, and a consequent desire in men to control, silence, and punish them. We can see this desire for control clearly in Afghanistan and Iran, but it also exists in democratic societies in the widespread rape and murder of women. From the perspective of our relationship with the earth, the final loss of the goddess and the divine feminine was a catastrophe. Everything that was once associated with the divine feminine, that is nature, matter, sexuality, and the whole physical, instinctual aspect of life, and all relationships between them, was excluded from the sacred. Nature, split off from spirit, was effectively de-souled. We lost the awareness that spirit was active and immanent in the world. We lost the sense of living within a sacred order. This myth imprinted us with a negative image of our nature and our presence on this planet, and placed a heavy burden of shame and guilt, particularly sexual guilt, on our shoulders. And I don't think we've ever recovered from its pernicious influence. Now, in 325 CE, there was a council, a crucial council called the Council of Nicaea. And at this council, the Holy Spirit, once the title held by the goddess, was named a third aspect of the male trinity, and all connection with the divine feminine was permanently lost to Christians. However, she survived as Sophia, divine wisdom, and the Holy Spirit with the Gnostic Christians and the later alchemists. This council also saw the creation of the immensely powerful myth of Jesus as the celibate only Son of God, whose sacrificial death had ensured the redemption of Christians. This myth was formulated at the same Council of Nicaea, where Jesus was declared to be of the same substance as God, and therefore the Son of God. To hold this title, Jesus had to be immaculately conceived and celibate to avoid being tainted by the original sin of the fall. The church went to enormous lengths to conceal his marriage to Mary Magdalene by turning her into a whore. But the truth of their marriage survived, and 900 years later emerged in the teaching of the Cathar Church of the Holy Spirit, founded in 1167 in the Languedoc area of France. Mary Magdalene, or Miriam of Bethany, which was her name, was appointed by Jesus as teacher to the disciples at the Last Supper, a role that she assumed after the crucifixion. She was an Essene priestess who had also been trained as a priestess of Isis in an Egyptian temple. She wrote her account of the mission of Jesus, or Yeshua, his Aramaic name, while living in Alexandria, having moved to that city to avoid the persecution of the followers of Jesus in Palestine. In 45 CE, she took her gospel with her to France and taught there in the Languedoc area for 20 years until her death in 63 CE. 1,000 years later, her gospel became the most precious treasure of the Cathars, miraculously removed, I believe, from the castle of Montségur in 1244, just before its capitulation to the papal army. From this date, Mary Magdalene's original gospel survived in the care of a Cathar community in the Languedoc. In 2010, this community decided it was the right time to publish it. It was translated by Jeanne de Quillon and published as the Gospel of the Beloved Companion. Written in Alexandrian Greek, it is the only eyewitness account of the mission of Jesus and is therefore priceless. However, there is another fascinating aspect to the story of this gospel. Dr. Anine van der Meer, a student of the Gnostic scholar, the late Professor Emeritus Gilles Quispel, has shown in her extraordinarily recently published book, Mary Magdalene Unveiled, how a man called John the Elder, living around 90 to 100 in Ephesus, copied Mary's gospel, often word for word, redacting many of its contents and changing Jesus's references to his mother, the Holy Spirit, into God the Father. He also changed the words beloved companion into beloved disciple. The sculpture of the Last Supper on the right is from a church in the town of Foix in the Ariège district of France, where the Cathars once lived and where the union of Jesus and Mary Magdalene was recognized and remembered by them. I will just show you this book by Anine van der Meer, if you can see. It's just been recently published in English, but was published in Dutch, I think, a year ago. Now, Jesus, or Yeshua, incarnated on this planet to offer humanity the path to awakening through direct connection with the divine ground. He and Miriam of Bethany, his beloved wife, whom we knew as Mary Magdalene, were both Essenes. Their mission was to restore the love-wisdom teaching of the first temple that had been destroyed by the Deuteronomists, and to restore the lost connection between the above and the below. He spoke about the kingdom of heaven within us, the fully awakened man and woman we have the power to become, recovering the awareness of our immortal nature as children of God, incarnated on this planet for an evolutionary purpose. He also said that the kingdom of heaven was spread out upon the earth and men did not see it. He did not ask for belief and worship, but for the transformation of our understanding of life and of our own nature. And he offered himself as a model to emulate, not to worship. Had his marriage to Mary Magdalene been recognized at the inception of Christianity, the emphasis on celibacy as the path to spirituality might never have existed. We might have been spared the disastrous association of sexuality with sin, as well as the sexual abuse of children by celibate priests. We would have had a living image of a sacred marriage right at the heart of Christianity. And this could have led to a more enlightened and balanced civilization, instead of to the blood-soaked history of Christianity in its conquests in the name of God. Now I need to speak briefly about scientific materialism, which is the current ideology which governs a great deal of the West today. Once science began to dissociate itself from religion in the 17th century, matter lost any residual numinosity which it still retained. Since it was now viewed as dead and devoid of spirit, it could be rendered subject to man. Deeply embedded in the unconscious is the idea that because the earth was a place of exile, sin, suffering, and death, it was no longer sacred. Science has told us that we are the only conscious beings in a vast, uncaring, dead universe that is without intelligence, consciousness, meaning, or purpose. God and the soul are no more than residual superstitions. Consciousness, they say, originates in the neurons of the brain and dies with the death of the physical body, so there can be no survival of the soul. These materialist beliefs have inflicted a further separation of the great below from the great above. They have led directly to the belief that man is master of this planet with limitless power over nature, to nuclear bombs, and to our current decadent secular culture. If matter is insentient, it doesn't matter what we do to it. I hope you can see what a huge work of healing is needed to free us from the legacy of these beliefs, whether religious or secular, that have become deeply imprinted on the human psyche. Millennia ago, spirit was not outside or beyond us. We were within spirit. Spirit was the air we breathed, present within every aspect of the life around us. It is this utterly different experience of life that we have lost, yet it lives deep within our soul memory. Alchemy, descending from what was taught in certain temples in Egypt 5,000 years ago, and known as the Hermetic science, kept this ancient awareness alive for us. Thanks to thousands of alchemists who risk their lives to transmit it, we are just beginning to recover it now. So after this long introduction, I can come to alchemy. Although the gradient for the transformation of consciousness in humanity is so slow and so arduous, we are all participating in a stupendous alchemical great work, the evolutionary ascent of humanity and our return to our source. Whereas Christianity taught that the Redeemer is outside us and that our ultimate redemption as Christians has been assured by Christ's sacrificial death, alchemy taught that the alchemist can become the redeemer or rescuer of the lost aspect of spirit that is hidden within himself and nature, working with spirit to accomplish its awakening within him. This gives great significance to the individual, since the divine drama of redemption is consummated in and through us. It is an awesome and heroic task. Each one of us carries the mystery of the incarnation of spirit in this dimension. Alchemy is a sacred rite of unification, an opus divinum. In the 3rd century CE, there was an Egyptian alchemist called Zosimus of Panopolis who wrote these words, which I love. Hidden within man, there exists a heavenly and divine light, which cannot be placed in man from without, but must emerge from within. Alchemy is an opus divinum because its aim is to awaken us to our innate divinity that is intrinsic to the divinity of the entire cosmos, something that was known millennia ago in the temples of Egypt. Think of what it would mean for the transformation of all our relationships if this fact of our innate divinity were known to all the peoples on the planet, regardless of their race, religion, caste, class, or gender. Although divided by our beliefs, we are all sons and daughters of God. Alchemy is called the royal art. Each one of us carries within his or her being the royal value, the greater, finer, more complete person we can become, symbolized by the mysterious stone or gold of the alchemist. Alchemy is a process of revelation, illumination, and transfiguration. The chrysalis that we are can become the butterfly. The alchemist said, our gold is not the common gold. And they said, there are two categories in this art, namely seeing with the eye and understanding with the heart. And this is the hidden stone, which is fitly called a gift of God. And this divine stone is the heart and tincture of gold, which the philosophers seek. Alchemy is the hermetic science of reconnecting the great below with the great above, transmuting the base metal of the pre-conscious soul into the gold of the awakened soul that is reunited with the divine ground. The great work of alchemy tells us that we have our origin in the starry ground of the cosmos, that we are star life in every cell of our being. The whole of cosmic and planetary evolution is an alchemical process, a continuous process of creation and transformation, of dissolution and regeneration. Everything is connected. Everything is in a constant state of becoming. The great work of alchemy refines the base metal of our understanding, so that we, evolved from the fiery substance of the stars, can know ourselves as spirit. It heals the deep wound in the human soul that has come into being because of a sense of alienation, fear, loneliness, and separation from the divine. It tells us who we are and why we are here. The experience of our reconnection with the light and love of the divine ground is the gold that is not the common gold. Now, many Kabbalists were alchemists and vice versa. Alchemy and Kabbalism kept alive the shamanic awareness that spirit is present in nature, that everything that lives is sacred. This image is a Kabbalist one, where two men are sharing a vision of the higher worlds. The cosmos calls to us to be aware that we participate in its life, that everything is sacred and connected, one life, one source, one spirit. There has always been a chain of teachers known as the Golden Chain or Catena Aurea, who have transmitted this knowledge and insight from generation to generation over thousands of years. Two great streams of alchemical knowledge, one flowing from Egypt and the other from Persia, Syria, and Islamic Spain, came together in Europe in the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance. There were some 4,000 alchemists working in Europe between 1200 and 1650, and they created thousands of alchemical texts and images, some of which in the Sufi tradition were called rose gardens. In the Christian West alone, these texts ran to between 20 and 30,000 titles, many of them now safely housed here in the Embassy of the Free Mind, collected over his lifetime by Joost Ritman. Here is an image of the alchemist following in the footsteps of nature, holding in his hand a lantern, which signifies the light of insight, and special glasses so he can see in the dark. His staff connects him to the earth. The great work of alchemy is about healing the deep wound in the human soul, inflicted by the dualism of the patriarchal religions that separated nature from spirit and led ultimately to the desacralization of the world. It is about recovering what Einstein called a sacred gift, the shamanic vision, the imaginative sensibility that once connected us to nature and the cosmos. At the same time, it is about growing into our unique individuality, differentiating ourselves from the deficient values that presently control the political and religious life of humanity and the media, living from a totally different perspective on life, in joyous communion with the divine ground. Alchemy through a rainbow bridge between spirit and nature, holding the relationship between the above and the below, the unmanifest and the manifest, thereby eliminating the dualism that had separated nature from spirit. The alchemist said, "Whoever shall make the hidden manifest knoweth the whole work." Much of what they discovered is coming into consciousness now through quantum physics, which is proving to us how, at the deepest level of subatomic matter, we are connected to planetary life and to the 3 trillion galaxies of the cosmos. Alchemy is not merely an art or science to teach metallic transmutation, so much as a true and solid science that teaches how to know the center of all things, which in the divine language is called the spirit of life. Alchemy is the Western tradition of inner psychic transformation. It is a feminine mystery, a mystery of the soul. The symbols yield their secret to them who contemplate them, and the process of transformation is unique for each one of us, yet intrinsically the same for all. The great work of alchemy is about the relationship between man and the cosmos, reconnecting the great below with the great above. It's about the creation of an immortal body of light, the integration of body, soul, and spirit, and the conscious reunion with what an alchemist called Gerhard Dorn called the unus mundus, or the divine ground. This means we die a conscious death without fear of extinction. The alchemist knew there is no death for the soul. Consciousness continues beyond the death of the body. We are, in fact, immortal beings. In many texts, alchemy gives us the image of a king who needs to die in order that his son may rule in his stead. The old king personifies the values and the belief systems that currently rule our world, that have ruled it for millennia. In relation to the individual, the old king personifies a consciousness that knows nothing of its deeper ground and is controlled by the power drive of the collective shadow. We can also identify the old king with an outworn image of spirit, split off from nature, that needs to be relinquished so that a new image may emerge from the depths of our soul. Now I'm going to show you some exquisite images from a book called Splendor Solis, which is in the British Library, one of its most precious possessions. This beautiful text, which accompanies this image, says, "The king's son lies in the depths of the sea as though dead, but he lives and calls from the deep. Whosoever will free me from the waters and lead me to dry land, him will I prosper with everlasting riches." The king's son personifies the awakened consciousness and values generated by a deeper communion with spirit. 2,000 years ago, Jesus was the young king who brought potential renewal to his culture and the possibility of a radical transformation of human values and relationships, reflected in the sublime words of the Sermon on the Mount in the Gospel of Matthew. 500 years before him, the Buddha did the same for his culture in India, offering the path to enlightenment to all, regardless of their caste or gender. Both emphasized compassion and love as the path to reunion with the divine ground. Alchemy sets its supreme quest in the context of a marriage between the solar and lunar aspects of the soul, a union between the head and our heart, between our rational consciousness focused through thinking and another kind of consciousness focused through the heart, through intuition, feeling, and the creative imagination. This marriage reunites the invisible dimension of the subtle world with the visible, that material world of our experience. So they are no longer seen as separate, but united in a sacred marriage. What this marriage amounts to is the profound healing of our long neglected soul, as well as the body, a healing of all our relationships with each other, whether personal, national, or racial, as these are placed in the context of what is of supreme value and importance, the transformation of our understanding of life and of ourselves. So I come to the lesser work now and the creation of the white stone or rose. Alchemy defines 3 and sometimes 4 stages in the great work of bringing forth the alchemical stone or gold. This process is circulatory and continuous and moves through the different phases not once but many times. The whole process is about the expansion of consciousness, about deepening our connection with the subtle field of the soul, about creating a relationship with the divine ground. The stages of the lesser work are governed by fire and water, the transformative fire and the cleansing, clarifying waters of the soul. The first stage is about separating the soul from the body so that we become aware that we have a soul. It is the phase of nigredo or separatio, the phase of death and dissolution marked by recurring depression that the alchemists called a blackness blacker than black. It involves the struggle with the dragon or the power principle that Jesus called the master or ruler of the world, which, as we can see, still holds the world in its grip. The need for power has its origin in our traumatized survival instincts, which need to be recognized and transformed consciously. The symbol of the nigredo is the raven. The alchemists saw the nigredo or separatio as the state of blind suffering and ignorance before the dawning of awareness. They also called this state the unio naturalis, meaning the state we live in from day to day, responding to events as they happen, where we believe we have control of our lives, but are the victim of events, personal traumas, and the complexes, beliefs, and survival instincts which control us. In this state, the spirit in us is not free, but is a prisoner of all of these. If we are only aware of our ego and our rational mind, we have no access to a deeper level of consciousness. Separatio involves conflict, suffering, fear, bewilderment, and surrender. The original sense of the oneness of our being is split into 2. Yet, paradoxically, this work of differentiation is the first stage of healing the soul by reuniting the conscious solar aspect of the psyche with the repudiated and ignored lunar aspect, reuniting the conscious mind with the heart and the lunar soul. The fire of transformation burns and transforms the dross in our nature until the state of unconscious fusion with our instincts is transmuted into a higher, more conscious relationship with them. The strange male-female form shown here is called a rebus, an intermediate state before the formation of a hermaphrodite. It is an image of what the alchemists call the first conjunctio, when the previous unconscious state is differentiated into 2 separate and yet conjoined units. Here the rebus is undergoing the burning away of the dross that has covered the gold of the spirit. It is whitened in the fire, turned to ashes. Fire in this phase is the main agent of transformation. No new life can arise without the death of the old. Here we have an image of the shamanic descent into the grave or the underworld of the soul and the emergence of the transformed initiate. We see the sowing of the seeds that will be transformed into the green shoots of regeneration. This image goes back to Egypt and the annual return of the dismembered god Osiris in the wheat that grew back from the black mud deposited on the banks of the Nile. Here is an image of a man holding a sword and a golden severed head, standing in front of a dismembered body. Dismemberment is about letting go of old beliefs, dissolving old angers, hatreds, resentments, and guilt in which the spirit has become imprisoned, entangled, or buried. It is about undoing the limiting structures we find ourselves in while adapting to the false beliefs and values of the world. Psychic growth can be very painful and frightening for the ego or the conscious mind, and this image of dismemberment reflects it. But here again, you see the beautiful border around the edge, which symbolizes bringing oneself into relationship with nature. The melancholia and suffering of the alchemist are also the anguish of spirit itself, undergoing the travel and pain of dismemberment and transformation. Spirit suffers with us in the agonizing experiences of our own lives, because we are part of spirit. Now, the second stage is called the albedo or solutio, and it's the encounter with the feminine soul. This is the stage of awakening and healing, the opening of the heart, the copious shedding of tears, the dawning of illumination, insight, and wisdom. This divine water makes the dead living and the living dead. It lightens the darkness and darkens the light. Its symbols are the queen, the moon, moonlight, the white stone or rose, the lily, the dove, and the swan. The albedo is the phase of baptism or immersion in the watery feminine womb of the soul. It is a process of washing, cleansing, purifying, clarifying, or seeing more clearly. The light of wisdom and the light of insight and wisdom begins to dawn, as well as a new humility and a disengagement from superficial goals. The alchemist compared this stage to the gradual whitening of the sky after the darkness of night and to the moon or moonlight. This is about the awakening of the feminine lunar principle symbolized by the queen, the awakening of the heart, the dawning of compassion for oneself and for the interminable suffering of life on this planet. Not only the suffering of people, but the dwindling life of the biosphere. It is about melting the snow and ice of frozen feelings, shedding tears of sorrow and of joy. The alchemist sits in a tub while an assistant uses the bellows to increase the fire and the heat. The dove of the Holy Spirit rests on his head in blessing. Water washes, cleanses, renews. Fire purifies, burns, transmutes. By these processes, the primal matter of our psychic life is refined, cleansed, rendered more subtle and translucent to the ground of spirit. By these methods, the quintessential gold of spirit emerges from beneath the rust or verdigris that has accrued to it over the millennia of human evolution. The passionate intensity of devotion to the work is the fire that transforms, the fire that is spirit itself. In another image from this exquisite book, Splendor Solis, a dark man carrying in his limbs the three colors of the alchemical process, black, white, and red, emerges from the black mud of the Negredo. The image of a man emerging from the mud goes back to the Egyptian mysteries of Osiris, reborn annually from the mud of the Nile. He is greeted by an angelic woman whose white wings are covered with peacock eyes and whose robe is covered with flowers. She wears a crown and a necklace studded with rubies, and a six-pointed star rests on her head. She is divine wisdom, or Sophia, also known as the Holy Spirit, the divine feminine aspect of deity rejected by the patriarchal religions, whom the alchemists took as their guide. She holds the red robe, which symbolizes the rubedo, or final stage of alchemy, and a new, regenerated, and integrated consciousness. Her yellow sleeve hints perhaps at the gold of the final stage. All around her are the flowers and animals that are part of the sacred unity of life. Notice the red rose in the top left-hand corner. The rose has always been a symbol of the divine feminine and the Holy Spirit. The feminine image of Sophia, or divine wisdom, and the Holy Spirit is the presiding image of alchemy. Her origin may be in the great goddesses of a lunar era, the goddess Asherah in the first temple in Jerusalem, or the wisdom texts of the Old Testament and the Apocrypha, where wisdom speaks as the Holy Spirit and offers the bread of understanding and the water of wisdom to man. The feminine archetype at its highest level has always been associated with nature and with soul. Not soul in a personal sense, but soul as the great cosmic sea of being in which we are all immersed. The alchemists kept alive this ancient concept of soul and took divine wisdom as their guide. They knew the Holy Spirit to be a living force and active presence, pouring out the waters of love and illumination on humanity. For many centuries in European culture, deeply repressive of the soul and the feminine, alchemy and Kabbalah secretly carried the image of this disowned aspect of the Godhead. Alchemists who were Kabbalists knew her as the Shekinah. In one alchemical text called the Traumatised, wisdom speaks these unforgettable words to the alchemists. Understand, ye sons of wisdom, protect me, and I will protect you. Give me my due, that I may help you. One of the most powerful and profound statements of alchemy. This is a message for our time, as the longing to protect the life of the planet rises in us. When the alchemists painted these beautiful images, they were working hand in hand with spirit to manifest spirit in this dimension with their outstanding artistic skills. The very act of devotion to this work, communicating with the subtle field of the soul, developed their insight and their gifts. And this is how the white stone or rose and the lunar queen were constellated within them. The end of the first phase and the formation of the white stone or rose is illustrated by the retort holding the white lunar queen illumined by the sun. In this image, Mercury sits in a chariot drawn by two cocks who herald the coming of the dawn. The matter that is being transmuted has now reached a stage of fixation in the alchemist that no fire of passion can destroy. Below, there's a scene showing the flourishing of arts and sciences. Human consciousness has been raised through the stages of the Nigredo and the Albedo to a state where it can become the vehicle for the manifestation of spirit. Part of the work of the Albedo is to redeem the body, healing the split between mind and body, becoming aware of the atrocious suffering inflicted on the body through false religious beliefs. A colossal work of healing is required for the body and matter to be recognized as the living expression and vehicle of spirit. Killing the bodies of men and women in war is a crime against the Holy Spirit. Reaching ever deeper into the heart of their psychic life that was reflected in the mirror of their retort, the alchemists began to see the unity of everything, how the animating ground of everything is spirit. They felt the aliveness of matter, entered into dialogue with it, and wept with wonder and amazement at what was revealed to them. Now I come to the greater work, or the libido, which is the final stage of the work. The libido is about the creation of an immortal body of light, the integration of body, soul, and spirit, and the experience of union with the divine ground, the unus mundus. Its symbols are the red stone or rose, the divine elixir, the flower of immortality, the quintessential gold, and the phoenix. The young king symbolizes the illumined consciousness, which is the red tincture, stone, or universal medicine that can heal all afflictions. The will to power of the ego that can impede or destroy the work has been overcome. Here, Luna, riding in a chariot above, has brought forth the fixed red tincture, universal healing medicine, symbolized by the figure of the young king, who stands on an inverted moon and is illumined by the golden rays of the sun. This final phase is becoming aware of inhabiting an immortal body of light, the starry or celestial body that we may inhabit after our death. It dissolves the dualism that split nature from spirit and led to the perilous situation we are in at this moment. It is about the union of body, soul, and spirit in the rising and full radiance of the sun, as a symbol of the light and love of the divine ground. The rubedo signifies the bursting open of the heart, the release of compassion as a fountain of light and love flowing towards all forms of life, towards the earth, towards each other. The longing to heal, nurture, protect, and cherish is embodied in some kind of creative action in the world. Red gold is the color of the rubedo, and the red rose and red stone are symbols of the completion of the great work. This is my last image. In this beautiful image of the hermaphrodite, The soul of the alchemist has integrated not only the solar and lunar, conscious and unconscious aspects of his being, but also the invisible and visible dimensions of reality, the above with the below. He or she holds an egg that contains the colors of the phases of the process, the black of the negredo, the white of the albedo, and the red of the rubedo. These are also reflected in the red and white wings and the black body. The man wears a solar halo and the woman a lunar one. The mirror in the center reflects the surrounding landscape, which is also the inner landscape of the soul. The landscape within and without the mirror is tinctured with gold. I am reminded of the words of Jesus in Logion 22 of the Gospel of Thomas, which suggests the union of the above and the below. When you make the two one, and when you make the inner as the outer, and the outer as the inner, and the above as the below, and when you make the male and the female into a single one, so that the male will not be male and the female not be female, then you shall enter the kingdom. As they watch the matter of their psychic life transform in the mirror of their alchemical retort, the alchemists experienced the immense mystery of what they were witnessing. They realized that they were assisting spirit in the evolutionary effort of bringing itself to consciousness over eons of earth time, leading its creation back to the source. They had revealed to them in a gradual process of illumination the innate divinity of nature and all life processes. They saw that one divine spirit was at work in all forms of life and in human consciousness as well. They sought to bring to birth in themselves the hidden spirit that longed to be rescued from its buried state. In accomplishing this double act of redemption, they became the sons of divine wisdom, inheritors of the true philosophical gold, and they became the ministers, not the masters of the stone, their lives illumined and guided by the Holy Spirit, eternally pouring forth light and love from the divine ground. No one, they said, may accomplish this work except through humility and love. Now I'm going to end with an extraordinary story, a personal story, not mine, but somebody else's. Alchemy invites a shamanic experience that happens to us when we are ready to awaken. I would like to share with you a modern example of the experience of awakening. With his permission, it is taken from a recently published book called Silicon, written by an Italian physicist called Federico Fagin, an extraordinary, brilliant, and wonderful man who moved from Italy to America in his 20s and, working closely with matter like an alchemist, invented the first microprocessor and went on to make the touchpads and touch screens all of us now use. And this is what he wrote. In December of 1990, while I was with my family at Lake Tahoe, I awoke around midnight to get a drink of water. I looked out over the lake while sipping the refreshing water. When I went back to bed again and tried to fall asleep, I felt a powerful rush of energy emerge from my chest like nothing I had ever felt before and could not even imagine possible. The feeling was love, but a love so intense and so incredibly fulfilling that it surpassed any other notions I had about love. Even more unbelievable was the fact that I knew I was the source of this love. I experienced it as a broad beam of shimmering white light, alive and beatific, gushing from my heart with incredible strength. Then suddenly that light exploded. It filled the room and expanded to embrace the entire universe with the same white brilliance. I knew then, without a shadow of a doubt, that this was the substance from which all that exists is made. This is what created the universe out of itself. Then, with immense surprise, I knew that I was that light. The entire experience lasted perhaps 1 minute, and it changed me forever. My relationship with the world had always been as a separate observer, perceiving the universe as outside myself and disconnected from me. What made this even more astonishing was its impossible perspective, because I was both the experiencer and the experience. I was simultaneously the observer of the world and the world. I was the world observing itself. I was concurrently knowing that the world is made of a substance that feels like love, and I am that substance. This experience contained an unprecedented force of truth, because it felt true at all levels of my being. At the physical level, my body was alive and vibrant like I had never felt it before. At the emotional level, I experienced myself as an impossibly powerful source of love. And at the mental level, I knew with certainty that all is made of love. I now see my identity as that unique point of view with which one, all that is, the totality of what exists, observes and knows itself. I am a point of view of one, a portion of one, indivisible from it. That vivid experience revealed a reality more real than the physical world I had previously thought was the only reality. My experience has maintained its original intensity and clarity over the years and has changed my life from the inside out. If we could take this revelation to our heart, which is our conduit to our soul, it could help to heal all our relationships and transform our actions in the world. Because at the quantum level, we are all connected. When thousands of us embark on the great work, millions will be affected. I believe we can heal the terrible errors our beliefs have created. We can unite the great below with the great above and live and act from a different relationship with life. As we do so, our minds would serve the deepest longing of our hearts, the deepest wisdom of our soul, and we would know, with the great Italian visionary Giordano Bruno, that a single force, love, links and gives life to infinite worlds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. This wonderful. I will just.
Yes. Hier is Rachel.
Lovely to see you again.
Yeah.
Hey, Anne, here I am.
Hello, Just. Hello.
Yes. I want to say that I agree with every word you said. And it was a richness to see the whole,
Whole panorama.
Yeah, the whole panorama. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I've done it for you.
And for you, and for you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne, for this beautiful talk. Very inspiring. We have now time for some questions. Then they are starting to pour in. So I will start reading them. Toby says, wow, thank you so much. And we have a question from an anonymous attendee. Alchemical philosophy is so similar to yogic philosophy. Can you say anything about this?
Yes, I would say that yoga was the alchemy of the East. And certainly originally there was one teaching which spread out to different parts of the world, possibly coming from Atlantis, that took root in different parts and in different philosophies, different practices. But I would agree with that, definitely.
Thank you. So any other questions? We can either put it in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and we will get it answered. I have some more questions here. Do you think that the same stages and images will apply to the female psyche, as many of the alchemists were men?
The alchemists often had a soror mystica, a sister soul who worked with them. We don't hear so much about them. There was one in France whose name I can't remember because my memory's going, but there was a Perella, I think her name was, and she was very famous as the soror mystica of that alchemist. So you should never think that this is only a male practice. It was not a male practice. There were maybe possibly female alchemists as well in their own right.
Yes, we had Maria the Prophetessa.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have some more questions. Vincent is saying, hi, thank you so much for your talk. I appreciate your emphasis on the divine feminine and the great work and in the great work and humanity. In your opinion, what is the role and salience of the divine masculine despite its repressive effect in history?
Well, the divine masculine is the balance and is the marriage partner of the divine feminine. And it always was this before we got the male god, so to speak. There was always the sacred marriage in Egypt and in Sumer and in Greece between Zeus and Hera. This was known in the ancient world, but it's been forgotten. So the divine masculine is the power to bring things into manifestation, to bring the soul into manifestation and action in the world in some kind, not the action that we're seeing at the moment, but the action that has fought really all the way through history for greater consciousness, for freedom, for human rights, for release from slavery, not only the slavery to religion, but the slavery to the slave trade. All the great movements that have come in humanity have been generated, if you like, by the feminine, but have been manifested by the masculine. This is very important to understand, that they work together. You can't have one without the other if things are going well. And if the below is connected with the above, they're working together. The divine ground is dual, as it were.
A few questions on further reading. So Toby's asking, where can I go for further reading and listening? In addition, of course, the Embassy of the Free Mind.
Yes, there's Anine van der Meer's book, that I showed you, which I'll show again. This one is essential reading for anybody who has a real interest in the history that I've been describing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that clearly?
Yes.
And there's also the book, for those who are more academic, there's this book, which has recently been published by Dr. Margaret Barker. And this gives the history of the Deuteronomists and what they did to the image of divine wisdom, not only the goddess, but the whole wisdom tradition, what they did. Can you see that clearly?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I would recommend that to anybody who's got an academic mind and plenty of time to study.
And of course, Anne's book, as I recommended, The Dream of the Cosmos, also is a great read. And I think you also have a chapter on alchemy in.
Yes, I do. Yes.
And Claire Marie asked if there's a book that you would recommend for the different stages of alchemy in an easy to understand language to put into practice and start our journey.
I can't, I'm afraid, because I've studied this for so many years and I can't remember where I started. My library is full of books, but I can't recommend one in particular. And maybe the Embassy of the Free Mind could recommend one. I think that would be the thing to do.
Yeah, I would recommend The Fires of Alchemy, which is actually published by the same publisher that published your book, Archive Publishing, and you might know the author. She was a friend or a mentor of yours, you said to me. The Fires of
Alchemy. Yes, I can't remember her name at the moment, but that I would recommend, yes.
Yes, that's a very good one with a very easy to understand language. I will just find.
You can find it under Archive Publishing.
Yes.
All his books are listed there, all by the publisher.
Barbara,
yes.
Barbara Somers. Barbara
Summer.
Yes.
Barbara Somers, Somers.
I will put that in the chat box here. The fires. And then we have a question from Vanda. Thank you so much, dear Anne. You are wearing the healing blue of lapis lazuli, medicine Buddha, and you're surrounded by wonderful blue. I love listening to your wisdom. Thank you very much for being this wisdom carrier and sharing that with all of us. and a couple of more compliments. Great timing for this webinar. Thank you so much for the work. Oh. And I have one more question from an anonymous attendee. Wonderful webinar. Thank you so much. Just a question about the fusion of duality. What do you say related to the image of Baphomet?
Baphomet, I think, was a cipher for Sophia. I think it was a Templar image, as far as I remember, and they hid the image of Sophia under the hidden word Baphomet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
As far as I remember.
Yeah.
I've
got Joost.
And we had that beautiful congress in Saint-Félix-de-la-Roche. And then you spoke about our the man, the Nicetas.
Yes.
And there was this community of I would say, the community of I'm now out, but there was this community that started with the circle of John and was going forward through all the centuries. And Nicetas, he brought that chain of light to the world, in the Qatar world. So Montségur, we were there in 2016, and that was for me the start of a living energy that's now entering the world. And through my embassy of the free mind, with 32,000 books, we have an open gate to the future of mankind.
Well, you've done a fantastic, great work yourself, as you know. But you need every praise for what you've done.
Yes.
And our thanks and gratitude.
Yes.
For keeping them all safe in the embassy of the free mind. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. And
thank you.
Great. So let's see if we have a few final questions. So Sebastian is asking if you could say anything, if there's a relationship between dance and alchemy.
Dance and alchemy?
Hmm?
Yes. I mean, it's an alchemical process. Also cooking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the creative avenues that we have to do with alchemy. Anything that is to do with transformation is alchemical. So that whatever work you do, whether it's carpentry, cooking, dancing, singing, these are all processes which transform us as we learn how to do them and become expert at them, and then as we give them out into the world in whatever way we do. So that's a lovely question. Thank you.
Lovely answer. Thank you. So Daniela is asking, is it useful to continue talking in terms of masculine and feminine, terms that have been so polluted throughout the ages?
Well, that's a difficult one because we are male and female, and we have many aspects of life which can be characterized as more masculine or more feminine. I think we have to go on, but we have to be very careful not to fall into the pit of acrimony and anger and recrimination over all this. I mean, in my lifetime, I'm now 90, I've seen huge changes since I was in my 20s in relation to women, their position in the world, what they've been able to achieve and how they've been more accepted. I've also seen huge antagonism towards women. And the whole gender question has been raised up in England very strongly. And that is one of the pits into which one must not fall, because it's temporary and it will pass. There are more important things to really address at the moment, I think. So I think one has to leave it to each person to decide how they want to look upon these masculine and feminine in their own lives. Where is the masculine trying to express itself? Where is the feminine trying to express itself? What is the wound that either in your own nature you might be carrying? Where is your animus wounded, for instance, your masculine side wounded so that you can't function fully as a well-balanced woman? equally as a man, where is your anima wounded, where you can't function fully as a really conscious man. So they're both male and female, have elements in themselves of the opposite gender, which needs to be addressed and see whether they're balanced and functioning well, and whether they're really creative and bringing joy into your life, or are they bringing dissension and trouble and difficulties in your relationships that may need some help from psychotherapy.
Great. So we'll do one more question. I think one more. So Sebastian is asking, how can we get all this wisdom to the youth who seem to have stopped reading?
I think the youth are more awake than we think they are. They may have turned against things, but there's a great many young people I know, including my grandson, whose heart is awake and who have been tired out by the educational system that we put them through, and who are really in a stage of looking around in their 20s, say, or late teens, for something else. And there are masses of stuff that out there, really. I've been, in the last few weeks, I've been working to raise the awareness that we have to stop this killing, have to stop wars. And there are many young people involved in that all over the world, because there was a whole week focused on putting an end to violence and war. And many young people spoke up very movingly from different parts of the world. So I think that they will come to it as their souls guide them to it, and as their souls are leading them to the process of awakening. And also events in the world will assist with that, because there couldn't be anything more terrible than what's happening in the Middle East. And that in itself is an awakener to what we have to get beyond. We cannot go on with this pattern, or we will destroy the planet with our weapons and our stupidity. So I think young people are more awake than perhaps you, Sebastian, you may realize. Don't lose faith or hope. Time can change many things, even a few years. Look at what's changed in the last 4 or 5 years.
Thank you. I think it's a beautiful note to end this evening on. Thank you so much, Anne, for your talk and for your wisdom and for sharing your time with us. And thank you to all the attendants and the questions, and maybe a last thank you from Joost.
And I can say, I love you.
Well, I love you too, all of you, and I wish I could visit you again, but I can't.
In the time of the Catars, it was the community of the Paraclete.
Yes.
The Paraclete is the Holy Spirit and the dove.
And the dove, yes, absolutely. This is why the Cathars are so important, and also why that Gospel of Mary Magdalene came out of the Cathar community there. They've guarded it for a thousand years. God knows how. Anyway, I know it's not a forgery, because I know it was copied by John the Elder in Ephesus.
Yeah.
You couldn't copy a forgery.
Yeah.
Okay, so, much love to you.
And
thank you.
We'll say, I think we will enter a new millennium with new incarnations, with people who will live here on earth and change also.
I hope so.
Yes,
I hope so.
That's also my absolute conviction. And that's the reason why I founded the Embassy of the Free Mind.
Well, you have good foresight, good intuition.
And with that, of course, feel very welcome to stop by the Embassy of the Free Mind whenever you're in town, and keep an eye on the website for future events. Thank you again, Anne, and thanks everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.